So I'm over here chilling, thinking I got tomorrow's video ready to go, and then FGO's like, what if we just went ahead and dropped Ibuki Douji right now? And I'm like, you know what? You can try to drop it on this Sunday night or Monday morning, whatever you want to qualify this as. I'm not leaving my boys out to just dry out here wondering if they need to summon for Ibuki Douji. Now, I'm going to warn you guys, Ibuki is really, really good, and as someone that's been using her for like the last 2 years on JP, I can definitely vouch that she is worth summoning for, as long as you don't mind, kind of giving up some Sancords for like Muramasa or Vitra or Space Ishtar, other servants like that. But then again, she definitely will be worth your court. She will definitely put in a lot of work for you, and we're going to talk about all the things that she's able to do in today's video. But before we actually begin, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for that sweet daily FGO content, because your boy is always out here making sure that you are informed. Also, I'll be back from my vacation on Wednesday, so starting Wednesday again every weekday, I'll be starting to stream at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, usually FGO, but sometimes I've been known to dabble in a little bit of FGO, a little bit of Souls-like games, so if that interests you, make sure you come out to those streams every weekday. And with all that being said, let's just go ahead and start diving into this, starting off with Ibuki's hits. Of which you will note that she has a bit of an oddity going with her kit, and that is that despite being a Saber, she pretty much has a Berserker deck with a triple Buster deck, and that's because Shuten Doji loves to absolutely slam all of her opponents and just obliterate them into the ground. Her being like 9 foot tall is not for show, she's also going to slam them for a lot of damage. She is quite the strong servant. But don't let that make you believe that she's not capable of still looping her NP. Not only does she have a very strong battery in the back pocket to help her out when it comes to looping her NP, but her arts card itself is actually not bad if you're able to land a crit on it, because it's got 3 hits and 0.78% NP gain tied to it. So if you're able to get some crits on it, which we know Buster Servants like to do with people like Merlin and Kolyanskaya, who's going to come out in the future, you can get some pretty decent NP gain going with this arts card. But again, you don't have to rely on it because they gave her a very strong battery so that you're not reliant on just having to crit on this arts card every single time if you want to refund her NP. I also want to go ahead and note that she has some pretty strong passive skills as well. 20% innate debuff resistance is going to help her out in challenge quests, just going ahead and helping her negate things like charms, stuns, attack downs, defense downs, anything like that that might annoy you in a fight. She has a 20% chance of just outright resisting. She has a nice little buff to her quick card, and even though it's still not super great, it'll definitely be able to put in a little bit of work in a Brave Chain. Like, you can gen a couple of stars and you can get a little bit of NP gain back from it if you happen to crit on it. Most notably, though, I think she's got a very, very strong 12% passive Buster buff that, combined with her other skills, actually makes her Buster cards really, really bite. And then, notably, she also has a 20% innate resistance to having her buffs removed on a 20% clip, which is really strong because you guys have heard me mention that a lot of bosses over here on JP like to remove your buffs, whether it's on break bar or it's on a skill that they give themselves or it's just innately tied to their NP. It can be really annoying to set up your servant to just kind of like clap a boss in 3 turns and then just get all of their buffs removed, and then it kind of ruins your perfect game setup. This at least gives Ibuki a fighting chance in being able to kind of fight that off and hold on to her buffs, even if it is only 20% chance, but it is still nice that she at least has that built into her kit. But let's talk about her other skills, the main skills that you're going to be using when you're using Ibuki. Her first skill starts her off incredibly strong. She's getting a 40% attack buff that lasts for 3 times for 3 turns, and the creme de la creme for all of these Buster Servants we've been talking about for like the last couple of days, she has a 50% battery built into this first skill, which means not only is she going to be insanely consistent when it comes to doing challenge quests and whatnot, you can actually use her for Buster farming, because Kolyanskaya absolutely loves pairing herself with people that just have an innate 50% battery, no append skill needed. She absolutely loves working with those people, and Ibuki does enough damage that it's kind of worth using her for Buster farming. Her damage mod is also pretty good. There's some common enemies you can encounter with her damage mod. We'll obviously talk about that when we get to the third skill. But overall, both of these things are setting up Ibuki for a lot of success. It's going to allow her to get 3 really strong hits in, and you don't waste the 40% attack buff if you just don't Brave Chain on the first turn. Like, let's say you get 1 really strong card on her first turn, then you fire her NP and then do another, like, face card or something. You at least didn't waste, like, that huge attack buff on, like, a 1-turn mana burst. You got to kind of spread it out a little bit, and that kind of helps offset the fact that it's so strong, because usually when they start giving people like these 40%, 50% attack buffs, it's either limited to one turn or they try to give it this 3 times restriction to allow it to kind of drag out for numerous turns. You also see this on like crit damage buffs. If they're going to give somebody like 100% crit damage, usually it's just not for free for 3 turns. It's either for one really good turn or you got to figure out how to draw it out for 3 turns. Overall, very, very strong opening for Ibuki. Her second skill, again, just keeps things going by giving her just a nice 30% buster buff for 3 turns, giving her a nice 30% defensive buff for 3 turns, and bombing 20 stars on a 5-turn cooldown. Already, this is insane, because if you are not aware, different buffs in FGO actually multiply into each other. So that attack buff is going to multiply into that buster buff because they're considered different buffs. The attack buff is, well, an attack buff, but the buster buff is counted as a card buff. And so just innately, Ibuki's able to double buff herself against any enemies in the game and potentially triple buff herself. Again, we'll talk about that in just a second. But it's also giving her a way to do some pretty decent damage if you happen to burn all of the attack buffs on, say, her first Brave Chain, right? Like you had a really, really good strong open and you burned all the attacks. At the very least, you still have the buster buff to make those buster cards bite. And likely, whenever you do use this skill, they are going to be biting because of those 20 crit stars, and she's also kind of thick. I know that ironically goes without saying, but she's got a 30% defensive buff for 3 turns, so again, kind of like someone like, say, Nero Caster, who also has, like, say, a defensive buff that's 30%, it just makes them a little more tanky than your average servant, right? It like allows them to live just a few hits here and there that other servants might fold to. Nothing super insane. They're not like tanking Goeshi as a NP or anything, but it does at least give them a little bit of an edge when it comes to harder fights. Finally, there's her third skill, which gives her a little bit more survivability technically because she's able to seal one enemy's NP for a turn. Keep in mind, you want to make sure you're actually targeting the NP you want to actually seal. I know some people kind of make the mistake and they forget that it is only one enemy. It's not like an AoE NP seal, so remember you got to target them. But this can potentially buy Ibuki a turn for, say, Merlin's second skill to come off a cooldown, or say if you're using a Waver in the team setup to get Waver's NP to further reduce the enemy's NP. Just being able to stall an extra turn and push that enemy's NP back another turn could definitely help in keeping your team alive. But then she's still not just only getting the defensive buffs, she's getting 2 very strong offensive buffs as well. A 50% crit damage buff for 3 turns. Ironic that I just mentioned Waver, because that's the same crit damage buff that he would be giving to Ibuki as well. So her crits are going to be really strong, and she's getting a special damage mod against undead enemies for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown. The nice thing over here is that the undead enemies are actually somewhat common in the game. This includes like your skeletons, your zombie soldiers, the weird Salem guys, big ghosts, small ghosts, the Kara no Kyokai ghost. All of those enemies that usually appear at least in some node in an event, or even in just some story chapters, are going to be people that Ibuki's going to be able to clap up really easily. And God forbid you have just any farming node in an event, once Buster farming becomes available with Koyenskaya, that just has any of these undead people, even an NP1 Ibuki is going to be able to clap that up quick, fast, and in a hurry. The only thing is that, like, you could do it neutrally, but against archers with the undead special damage mod, probably not going to get that because there aren't any servants that have the undead special damage mod, so you don't get to take advantage of it against them. But still, at NP1, worst case scenario, even going in neutrally, you'll clap up all the enemies around the servant, and you could probably finish it up with a Buster Brave Chain, or just really any Brave Chain in general. Overall, her skills are very, very strong, and she just continues to be really OP when it comes to her own NP, because she has built-in Pierce invincibility and Pierce defense built into that NP, the same thing that Kiara has that pretty much lets her just get through any boss in the game. It's absolutely insane because it doesn't matter if they do dodge, invincibility, big defensive buffs, none of it matters. Ibuki's always going to pierce them for normal damage. They're not going to be able to escape her NP, and then every time she hits them with the NP, she's reducing their buster resistance by 20% for 3 turns. So in challenge quest setups, where you're able to consistently loop Ibuki's NP numerous times in a row, you're going to see her do more and more and more damage every single time as she stacks these buster resistance downs on the enemies. Unfortunately, it doesn't proc first. If it did, I think it would be really nutty broken, because it would make her farming a lot easier as well, especially if you're like just going for NP1. But even still, if you just look at her damage is really, really good at NP1 for like A newer servant being able to compete at that high of a level as an AoE is pretty insane considering all the other stuff she's doing with the undead special damage mod, the fact that her NP is always going to hit somebody until we fight another person with solemn defense, the fact that she can double and even triple buff herself if she's got the undead special damage mod, the 50% battery, pretty much everything that this chick is doing is stupid dummy broken. So should you summon for Ibuki? That depends on if you're looking forward to any of these other servants that are going to be coming out, but if you're not looking forward to them, then you can definitely summon for Ibuki Douji. The really only huge qualm I have about her is that she doesn't have any boom, hardline survivability, like an invincibility or a dodge or anything like that, but I'm assuming the reason they didn't give her anything like that is because they're like, oh, you'll just pair her with Merlin, and Merlin has an AoE invincibility. Although I guess they didn't really think about that when they made Koyanskaya, because Koyanskaya gives you no additional survivability. But then again, Koyanskaya leans heavily into the Buster motto of, well, why worry about protecting myself if I just absolutely obliterate the enemy out of existence? But let me know in the comments down below if you're going to be summoning for Ibuki. Personally, I'm going to be summoning for Ibuki as soon as I get back down from my good old vacation over here, because I want to be able to record and stream it for you guys. Hopefully I'm able to get her. I've been looking forward to Ibuki for quite a long time, although I'm kind of torn right now. Do I summon for Summer BB or Ibuki? It's going to be a very, very hard choice, and I'll make my decision as soon as I come back down. But it might be Ibuki because, I don't know, having used her for 2 years over on the JP version, she's definitely left a mark on me and has definitely impressed me enough that personally I'm working on grailing her over there. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, make sure you subscribe to the channel for daily FGO content, peep the streams when I come back on Wednesday, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace, late guys.